America's astronaut. Nobody understood the risks of spaceflight better than astronaut John Glenn. The former U.S. Marine Corps test pilot had been chosen as the astronaut for America's first orbital flight. He pushed his body to the physical limit to prepare for the mission, and he worked tirelessly on the simulators and trainers, preparing for every failure scenario the engineers could imagine. He knew that his life depended on his readiness. As a test pilot, Glenn knew that the only way to remove all risk was to cancel the mission. He understood that he was likely to encounter some unforeseen problems, so he did his best to be ready for them. The preparations took longer than expected, and Project Mercury's launch was pushed back from late 1960 to July 1961 and then to 1962. The Russians didn't slow down. In August 1961, they completed a 17-orbit flight, nearly a full day in space. The Soviet successes put even more pressure on NASA to get the mission off the ground. In addition to the technical challenges, the launch team had to deal with the weather. Overcast skies at Cape Canaveral, Florida delayed takeoff on 2 more dates. Finally, the date was set, February 20th, 1962. John Glenn handled the delays with patience and grace. He stayed in top condition and remained focused. Before taking off, he asked the engineers to complete one more check. He asked them to double-check the math that had been done by the electronic computers. Many of the astronauts didn't fully trust the electronic number cruncher machines. As former test pilots, they staked their reputations and their lives on maintaining constant and direct control over their planes. A tiny error in judgment or a second of delay could mean disaster. The Mercury mission linked the spacecraft with the electronic computers on the ground. The astronauts worried. What if the computer lost power or seized up during the flight? When the Space Task Group bought more powerful computers, the trajectory equations were programmed into the machines so that they could automatically guide and control the rocket and send information about the capsule's position back to mission control. If the rocket misfired and sent the capsule into an incorrect orbit, the computer would alert the flight controllers who had the power to abort the mission. The capsule would detach from the rocket and land safely in the sea where the astronaut could be rescued. Once successfully launched, the capsule would push through the atmosphere and settle into orbit. It would separate from the rocket and establish new communications connections with the ground stations. The spacecraft would send data back to the tracking stations, which would capture the signals with their 64-foot receiving dishes. The Goddard Space Center in Maryland would also send Mission Control in Texas data about the spaceship's position. Hovering over the giant map of the world at Mission Control was a little cutout of the Mercury capsule suspended on a wire. As data came into Mission Control, the image of the capsule would move across the map. While it was an unsophisticated map by today's standards, at the time it helped the engineers follow the flight path. The capsule's signal would bounce from one tracking station to another as it moved. The data would allow the controllers to ask, where was the capsule compared to where they had calculated it to be at a given time? Was it too high, too low, too slow, too fast? They would constantly refine their data and make adjustments. This information would be used to determine exactly when the capsule's rocket should fire to bring the spacecraft back to Earth. For the mission to succeed, the hardware, the software, and the human beings had to function properly. A breakdown in any component would be tragic and would all unfold on live television. The human computers crunching numbers were something the astronauts understood and trusted. The women mathematicians dominated their mechanical calculators the same way the test pilots dominated their planes. Spaceship flying computers might be in the future, but John Glenn didn't have to trust them. He did trust the human computer, Katherine Johnson. Get the girl to check the numbers, Glenn said. If Katherine Johnson said the numbers were good, he was ready to go.